I'd like to welcome you all here. You all know me, Corey Berry. So I am the distributor for TTI here in Ireland. Rick Bowers is the president of TTI Success Insights, and we are really lucky to have him here with us. It's his first time in Ireland. It's country number
39.
Country number 39, and he said if he was coming here, he had to come for St. Paddy's weekend. That's why it's happening today. I'm joking. This executive briefing is very simple, very simple message. There was a time, I remember when I came out of college, my whole class emigrated, everybody. Literally, I'm not joking, literally every single person in the class emigrated. You couldn't get a job sweeping the streets. There were no jobs at all. I mean, none. And most people here are younger than me. Brian's not the same age as me, a little bit older. Sorry about that, Brian.
You need the odd dinosaur.
So most of you don't remember that Ireland when there was literally no opportunity. And but I came back to Ireland after a number of years. In that time, one of the issues was you were damn glad to get a job. So when you got a job, you kept it. And I still remember my parents talking about job security. You get in college, you get your degree, and you get into working for the government or into the bank or into the army or become an engineer or become a doctor. That's what it's all about, because if there was no mobility, there was very little opportunity. One of the advantages for the employers at that time was, of course, they can choose. And they really, you were an employee, you didn't have a lot of rights. You didn't have a lot of choices, you didn't have a lot of options. It wasn't easy to say, well, actually, if we don't like it here, I'm going to move over here, I'm going to do this and that. We live in a different planet today. I mean, I've got 4 children. One of them is there recording and doing the photography. My daughter, Elizabeth. If you need a great photographer, this is the person. And Ellie, for example, this is a case in point. Ellie went to ITT, her passion was photography. She went to ITT, got her first class honours degree, back doing her master's there at the moment. But she took 2 years out and she went walking all the waymarked trails of Ireland, blocking them. In our day, that was inconceivable, that you take 2 years, I'm going to walk around Ireland for 2 years as you call it, and everything would be fine. You know, we had to, we've got to get a job, we've got to survive, and whatever. My son Patrick graduated from Trinity there a while ago, computer science, and he had a choice of jobs. He really had a choice of jobs. It was interesting. He was hired actually by FRS, Peter Casta, and I'm having lunch with Peter and Chris Howard from Repute, and Chris was talking about how difficult it was to get these graduates, and Peter said, well, what's your offering? What's the package? And Chris said, well, the package, this amount of money, this is. He said, no. What's the offering? What are you doing for these guys? What are you offering? Chris is not going to listen to this video. And Chris was sort of saying, what do you mean? And that's really what this is about. This talk is really about what people today require. It's people first. And if you really want to attract and engage, retain the best people, particularly the young people, particularly people coming out of college today, if you want to attract him, you have to do things differently. We had a conference yesterday, 2 sessions, the morning and afternoon session with our distributor. And it was interesting having these conversations about how do you motivate people. In the good old day, you paid them money, and that was it, you thought that was it, you paid them money to motivate them. And one of the problems with this is, unless we can understand what people actually want, unless we understand what they require, what actually motivates them, what actually drives them, what's of interest to them, and give them those things, the old model doesn't work anymore. The old model, this is it, doesn't work. We have to have a new model, a new way of approaching people, of seeing people, and engage, and as Rick will talk about, create an experience for them so they become fully engaged. And that's really what the talk is about today. So when you're thinking about this, it's very easy for us to say, yeah. And we go back to the old way of doing things. The old way doesn't work anymore. This is what we talk about. It doesn't work anymore. And if you want to be one of these companies that really attracts talent and retains talent, you have to start thinking fundamentally differently about how you interact with your people and what they actually experience. So without any further ado on the word experience, I'm going to hand over to Rick Bowers, President TTI Success Insights, to talk about people first and the employee experience.
Thank you. I'm trying new technology today. I can control everything from my phone, so we'll see how that works. I have the old-fashioned clicker just in case I don't like it, but we'll see how this works. So, people first is something that we really started as a movement. We had our conference in January in Scottsdale, Arizona. Over 500 people in the room, and it's really a movement of what it says. It's putting people first, and all the things that Porg said about the employee brand and the whole hiring process, and it all starts from the time you write the job description till the time the person leaves the organization. So we're going to kind of go through what does that employee experience look like, what really is it, and all of those things. But I want to start with kind of a little bit about the company and a little bit about what People First really is. So TTI Success Insights, we've been in business since 1984, so this is our 35th year. We've been growing and growing over these years. We really started out back in the 80s as an assessment company that at that time you could do it on paper, or shortly after that it came out on the diskettes. So some of you may remember the floppy diskettes. That was actually my first job with the organization, was duplicating the diskettes. And I've been with the company since 1988. So unlike some of the young people today, which they'll be in the job for 6 months or 12 months and then they'll find a better opportunity and move. I've been with the company for 31 years. So kind of grown up with the company, I understand it from the ground roots up. It was a father-son that founded the company, and I was their first employee other than the two of them. So the father passed away in 2016, so now the son and I, my wife's also in the business, so the three of us are really running the organization. So really enjoy going to work every day and impacting people in ways that we know kind of on the surface, but really don't understand the full impact of what it does for people when you help them communicate and understand and ultimately love their job. Because the more they understand their job and can relate, the better off they're going to be. So our why statement, I'm a big Simon Sinek fan, so our why statement with the Start With Why book, if any of you have read that, it's been out for quite a few years, but our why statement is to reveal human potential. And we reveal human potential by creating self-awareness, awareness of others, and awareness of how you fit into an organization. And as we take that why statement and we apply it out, we reveal human potential. People like Porg and his network of distributors and our network of distributors in the US and all over the world, they release human potential. Because they're the ones that are taking the assessments and the tools, working with the organizations to help release that human potential so that organizations can realize their organizational potential. So we reveal, we release, and we realize. And those are kind of the mantra of why we exist as an organization. So, people blank. Back in the 70s, there was a game show in the US called Match Game. And this was kind of their final big money thing at the end of the show. After you won your match, you got to do a matching game. And I think you won $500 or something like that. So it was big money back in those days. But people blank. What comes to mind when you see that? What would you fill in the blank with? And I know first, because we've already talked about people first a little bit. What else?
Power.
People
Power.
People power. Okay. What else?
People problem.
Okay.
People problems.
People problems.
People matter.
People matter. That's a good one. Anything up here? People dreams. I thought you were going to say people tours. How about people skills? People skills reminds me of a story. I was at a American Associated Student of Training and Development, used to be ASTD, and it was Brene Brown talking, and she's a great speaker. Sitting in the audience with about 7,000 HR people, and she got to the conversation of hard skills versus soft skills. Hard skills are those skills like typing, or if you're in industry, welding, all the different electrical work, plumbing, all of those kinds of things. And she said, and what do you feel about the word soft skills? And the whole audience just groaned. And she said, I agree. soft skills are so much harder to learn than hard skills. And so that's where that people skills kind of comes into play, is that these are our personal skills or our professional skills or our people skills. They're not soft skills, because soft skills are harder than hard skills. And that's part of what we talk about, thinking about people in an organization. And I had a conversation with a couple of you guys in the back table this morning about, we have a stack of resumes and applicants, but none of them fit the job. And some people will say, well, just train them to fit it. But you can't train those people skills. You either have it or you don't. You can polish it and you can work hard at it and all of those, but the people that have them and fit what the job's looking for, they're the ones that are going to be successful. You can teach them hard skills. Sometimes experience is a bad thing because they have bad habits from a previous job. So if they have less experience but they fit the benchmark, that's somebody that's going to be more successful. So as we look through and think about people, if we can get people to say, I love my job, what type of productivity are they going to have? What type of engagement are they going to have? I love my job. It's not because I love to go to work every day and work. It's about the people that I work with. And those people that you hear that say, I hate my job, and you ask them, why haven't you changed or why haven't you done anything about it? Well, I love everybody I work with. They love the people that they're working with. So when you listen to what's happening and what employees are saying, they're talking about people and how important people are to them, how important that experience of their working with their colleagues and things really is. So when you think about how many people you know, and maybe even some of you in the room, how many people do you know that say, I love my job, I can't wait on Monday morning to get up and go to work? It's not a high percentage. How many of you in this room love your job? Hopefully most of you. Good. When I asked that question in our conference, we had a room full of consultants. And I said, probably most of you are a consultant because you hated a previous job. And you got a lot of head shaking and that kind of thing. And that's why people go into consulting, because they're tired of the corporate world. And so you can kind of build your own job, build your own experience, so to speak. So one of the goals that we have as an organization, and I have with you today, is to really start to spread this people first movement and really kind of bring it to the forefront of, when you create this experience for employees, you're going to get more people that say, I love my job. And think of everybody in your organization that said, I love my job. We'll get to some engagement numbers later in the presentation of percent of engaged versus disengaged employees. It's shocking. So let's take the people analogy and just kind of work through the letters in the word people. So as we look at just the word people, we for years used to talk about people are a company's most valuable asset. And when you think about it, what an asset is, it's something you can buy and sell, you own it. That doesn't really apply to when we think about people. We don't own people. Yesterday we talked about our assessments really create an operator's manual for your employees. How do you communicate with them? What value do they bring? What's their ideal environment? Why do they do what they do? So every piece of computer equipment or machinery or anything you buy, a television, your phone, it all comes with an operator's manual, but people don't. So how do you understand, how do you learn how to communicate with them? Sometimes it takes 6 months, 12 months, maybe even longer. But if you had a report that just told you, here's how they like to be communicated with, here's how they don't like to be communicated with. Just those 2 pages of information could put you so much farther down the road with a new employee. How about, have you ever been mismanaged? I see a lot of head shaking. Yeah. So that period of time where you worked for some company and you were being mismanaged, how productive were you? Not very. Did you stay at the job? Or maybe being mismanaged was just enough to make you leave and go somewhere different? So there's so many things that, little things, you could put the exact right person in a position and have a manager that doesn't know how to manage that person or manage in general, and you've lost. There was a study think it was back in about 2005 or 6, that said 56% of all managers were incompetent. And it's probably actually higher than that if you really think about it, about managers and how they would get promoted into a manager. A lot of times you'll have someone that's a superstar salesperson and you promote them to a sales manager and they fail. Because they have skills to sell, they don't have skills to manage. It's a different skill set. So as we move through to the next one, this is employee experience. And you guys have it in your book, so I didn't need to ask you what the E stands for, but a lot of times I'll ask you, well, what does this E stand for? And a lot of them will say energy or engagement or different things. Employee experience is not something that typically comes to people's minds. And with that word engagement, it's the second E, as you'll see if you look forward in your book. Engagement's not a thing. You have companies that say we need to create more employee engagement. You don't just create engagement. You create an experience. You create an environment. You create opportunities. You create leadership. All of the things that we're going to talk about in those next few letters. That's why engagement's at the bottom. Because if you don't do the rest of that, you're not going to get engagement. And that's why the numbers that you see on that statistic are so low. So if we think about employee experience, when I say that, a lot of times people think about ping pong tables and food trucks and hoverboards and massage Mondays. That's really not employee engagement or employee experience. Those are just things that some companies try to do, but it's more than that. It goes back to even that job description, even that first interview process. What are you doing in that process? Are you leaving them hanging for a long time, or are you responding to their email or their resume with an email in the first 24 hours so that they know you're interested in them as a candidate? We have 2 positions open right now. We have a VP of People, an HR position, and we have a CMO position. And over about a 3-week period, we got 350 applicants for those 2 positions. And with nearly full employment in the U.S., that's crazy. Most of them are in their current position. Probably 80 to 85% of them are already in a current position. They're just looking for something better. What kind of employee experience do you think they're having in their current company if they're a vice president of HR level or a chief marketing officer? And 85% of those resumes that we got are currently employed. They probably can't say I love my job. And so those are the kinds of things that as owners of companies or in charge of large organizations, do you know what your people are thinking? Do you know how many people are out interviewing? And what's that going to cost an organization if they do take another job and you have to then go through that process? So as we move on to opportunity, I saw a post at the beginning of this year, and it said 2019 is 365 opportunities. 365 opportunities. How many opportunities have you guys had? Now we're almost 3 months into the year. And are you taking advantage of the opportunities? Are you creating your own opportunities? Creating opportunities for people in your organizations. Opportunity is something that we're all looking for. And sometimes we let fear get the best of us and we don't jump at an opportunity because what if it doesn't work? What if you could build those opportunities for your employees so that they're very optimistic about it and they're excited to get into the next day of work or the next week of work because this is going to be the new opportunity next week. So what opportunities are in your organizations? Are they there? Do people know about them? Sometimes we sit around as leaders and we say, well, why has no one taken us up on this opportunity? And then we realize we didn't tell anybody about it. So it's something that we really have to focus on. So if we go to the next P, purpose. How many of us live our lives every day with a purpose? purpose that means something to us and that drives us. You'd be surprised how many people don't have a purpose and they're just kind of wandering through life. And again, what's their productivity level? Without a purpose, what are you really doing? I mentioned Simon Sinek earlier, I mentioned him again. He talks about working hard without a purpose is called stress. Working hard with a purpose is passion. So without a purpose, it's stress. And how many people do you hear talk about how stressed they are every day? But by the end of the week, man, I'm so stressed, I can't wait for the weekend. Versus it's Friday already? I can't believe how awesome this week was. That's passion. That's someone that's fulfilling their purpose on a daily basis. And as leaders of organizations, how do we create purpose for people? And that's a sign of a good leader. Is if you can create a purpose and living in that purpose and vision, people will start to follow that purpose and work towards your purpose. And that's really where organizations start to thrive. Let's talk about leadership. I think leadership is something that's much more difficult than people really think. Leadership is about not necessarily doing the job, which is hard for many leaders. It's about being responsible for the people that need to do the job. It's like this new CMO position, this new VP of People position. We're hiring super smart people, really, really good people that fit our job benchmark and have all of the things that need to be in place. But then you've got to trust them. You've got to train them. You've got to believe in them to do what you hired them to do. I spent the last year, 2018, my goal, and the entire staff knew it, my goal was not to be the bottleneck in the organization. Not to have stuff stuck in my inbox or stuck on my to-do list or laying on my desk and not getting back to the person that laid it there for me to approve. And things started flowing. I talked to somebody in the back of the room or one of these tables where the CEO's like really wants to get in and do the work and be part of it himself. Man, we all appreciate that person wanting to help, but that person's busy with so many other things and then you're waiting. Dave, our owner, CEO in our organization, he's like, well, why didn't I get to see that? I said, if you got to see everything that left this building, we would never send anything out of this building. And so it's letting go and doing that thing. Leadership is a lot like parenting, for those of you that have kids. Being a parent and the act of parenting isn't really any fun. I mean, you have to yell at them, you have to ground them, you have to discipline them, you have to do all of these things. What's fun about being a parent is when they start to do the things you've been trying to teach them, when you see the results of all of that. And that's the same thing with leadership. Leadership is exciting when you get that group of people that's accomplishing something you didn't think they could accomplish. All of these things, there's so many similarities to parenting and leadership. It's letting go of the children and say, go off and do this. It's like Tori said, it's saying, okay, go walk around Ireland for 2 years and do vlogs and blogs. And what kind of experience does that create? What kind of opportunity does that create? Whether you're a kid coming out into the world or an employee in an organization. So again, one more thing about leadership, it's really how do you inspire those around you? And as we see these things building on each other, it's creating that experience. It's putting out opportunities for people. It's having a purpose that someone can get behind and follow. And that's what really drives that leadership. And those leaders that you see that are very successful, and everybody is like on board and loving what the leader's doing, they're doing these things and these people acknowledge it. And as we go forward to the final one, now we can get to that engagement that we all talked about. That employee engagement. If we had more engagement in this organization, the Gallup poll, I'm sure the Gallup poll is relevant here. Gallup is a big polling company and does a lot of things in the US. Their engagement poll, they've been doing this since 2001, was the first year that they did it. And this year, the poll came out for 2018 at an all-time high of employee engagement. You know what that number was? 34%. Yeah, that's their 18-year high was 34% of engaged employees. You know what the low end of that was? And this is again a high for the low. It was at 18%, 13%. So that's 54% of disengaged employees in the middle. Don't worry about the 13% at the bottom. We have the 18 or the 34% at the top. What about that 54% in the middle? What can we do as leaders in organizations to take that 54% and create engagement versus disengagement? There's just a lot of little things, and we're going to spend the rest of the time kind of moving from people first into how do we create employee engagement. So as those things build and you create that environment, that culture, all of these pieces, that's really what leads to engagement. So when you use the people analogy, people, employee experience, opportunity, purpose, leadership, and engagement, these are the things that can make a huge difference in the organization. I saw a post a couple days ago on social media about Caterpillar, a pretty big company worldwide. And they said their most important thing that they're focusing on today is their people. Not on R&D, not on any of the other things that you would think an organization like that would be, is they know that if they're going to be successful, they have to focus on their people. That's a big company. I'd like to say we started this people first movement, but it's something that's been a trend. Employee experience started coming out in Forbes magazine early last year. But we want to try to keep this movement going and keep it flowing around the world so that organizations can really start to put some things in perspective. So as we transition into employee experience and really what that is, any kind of questions so far? Yes?
The old term suppose use when I would start off HR for employee engagement. So what would you say is sort of the difference in employee engagement versus employee experience, or is it just interchangeable term?
No, they're not really interchangeable. And that's kind of what this next section is what are the differences between engagement and experience, because all of the things that you do in employee experience are really going to lead towards the engagement. Yes?
I think that there's more of a focus on employee experience at the recruitment stage, and then when people actually come on board, the experience of the recruitment versus the experience of the organisation don't have.
I think it depends on the organization. I think some organizations, they do focus on that. Some organizations, that recruitment process is just crunching the numbers and driving people through. And if they don't understand what the job needs versus what the people bring and match those apples to apples, then they're just trying to put warm bodies into the position as opposed to truly understanding.
Because I've worked with a lot of kind of undergraduates who are involved in major graduate recruitment programs, and I think it's like they're very innovative in the way that they recruit their graduates. And then they go into large machines of organizations and they're completely disengaged because the experience of the recruitment and the actual experience of being in the organization don't match.
Yeah, I could definitely see how that's happening. And then one of the things that we talk about is that the employee brand can affect your overall brand image. And that starts from the recruitment process. So if the recruitment process is good, but then they get in and they don't like it and they leave, then that hurts the employee brand. How many have heard of Net Promoter Score? How about Employee Net Promoter Score, the ENPS? That's something that we do every year, and that score ranges from 100 to a negative 100. And if you get that up into that 50 to 70 range, that's a really good score for Employee Net Promoter Score. But companies like that, where they bring them in and all this great stuff and promise all these things, and then they're probably not going to be even above the zero. It could be on the negative side. So that's a critical number to measure, and it's such a simple process. It's one question: Would you refer a friend to work at this organization? Scale of 1 to 10. That's all it is. It's a powerful, powerful tool. So if you work in organizations or work with organizations that do any kind of surveys, add that question. And then sometimes you do a follow-up question with, what would it take for you to give a higher score? So you can get feedback. And sometimes you'll run into things like, I don't want someone else to take my job. Well, then you kind of have to discount some of those scores. So you can manipulate it a little bit if you want to, but the more you just leave it full on, here's what you get, the better off you're going to be. But that employee brand, we're going to talk a little bit more about it, is critical. Any other questions?
Is it the case that maybe sometimes organisations don't really understand what the elements of an employee experience are at all, and then when the employees come into a company, the engagement can't go anywhere because they haven't got the first piece right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, in Corey, I'm not picking on you because you're older than I am, but you are. Since he gave you a hard time about it. But I mean, think about the early days, or even 10, 20 years ago, in organizations, were employees treated as employees first, or people first, or were they just employees that are replaceable?
Well, I'm going to give you a perfect example, and I have no problem mentioning the company's name. I was living in London. I got a job with Horton Horth, Stoy Hayward, with partners in London, and doing feasibility studies for new project development for banks. And I always remember them, this incredible hiring process I went through. And I met the partners, and all this wonderful experience. And then I arrived in this office with 4 desks, a tiny little office. There was 4 of us sort of facing each other, cramped little desk with no window. And I remember working away there, and day 1, day 2, day 3. I remember coming to the end of the week, the Friday, and I looked at the clock, and it said 3 o'clock. I said, oh God, 3 o'clock, only 2 more hours to go. And then 2 hours later, I looked at the clock, and said 3:05. And I knew I had a problem. So the answer is, there was no employee experience.
Right.
And I worked particularly, I started out my career actually in the hospitality industry. I did an MBA in finance, and I worked on the edges of that industry in project development, mainly developing, building hotels and that kind of stuff. And so I had some great opportunities because I moved out to the edge of it, but the industry itself was very myopic, very closed, and there was no employee experience. And you made a point, one other point I wanted, you made a point here that really struck me. When you look at all the research on engagement, what they say, so I want to know where the company's going. I want to know what my role is in the company and how I fit into that. I want to know what opportunities there are for me in terms of career progression and development, and the quality of the people I work with. But most importantly, the person I'm actually working for, the person I'm reporting to. And my experience in my younger days, you're working with people who really, I mean, you were just an asset. You were completely replaceable, you were just an asset. The idea, they didn't know any better. The idea of thinking about this person and thinking about an employee experience was alien. You were just, you were a number, I had a problem, I had a job that needs to be done, and you were there to do that job. That was your function, and that was a total of the value that you had as far as that person was concerned. So it's completely different now, of course. Yeah. But that was certainly my early experience.
And I think there's, there's organizations that do a good job of it, and there's organizations that have kind of started to hear about it, but are not really sure how to do it. And then there's organizations that just still don't have a clue because they're still running in the way that they've run for the last 20 years. And so I think that's just an opportunity for things to really start to grow. And whether the millennial generation has kind of brought this to the forefront or not, but that generation is kind of the jumping from job to job to job. They're not staying in places for 30 plus years like I did. I mean, they're not even staying there for 30 months in some cases because here's a better opportunity. I mean, I think your son, you talked about that, is that he got this great job and 6 months in, he's like, oh, I can go here and get this next one. And you're like, you got to give this company more than 6 months to really bloom and be an opportunity for you.
I think the challenge we have as HR professionals nowadays is I work in a very multicultural, very diverse organisation, predominantly millennials, under the age of 35, I'd say maybe 70% of the organisation. And yes, they brought it to the forefront, but it's trying to prove to the business that these things really matter. It's not just pink and fluffy, it's not just being nice to people. The demands that the younger generation, I don't like using that word, but that generation having, they really are pushing the boundaries with you in terms of changing the work, changing the environment, changing how you think, changing how you measure, changing how you define success. And I think for those of us who are in the leadership position don't tend to be of that age group, but it is quite, it is challenging to keep it on the agenda all the time.
And this is kind of, I didn't really want to get into this topic, but I think it's something that as parents of that generation, it's a little bit our fault of you can be anything you want to be, and everybody gets a trophy and all of that kind of stuff. And then you get into the job and you can't treat the employees the way you treated your kids, but that's what they expect. I coach a lot of youth sports and things, and I tell the kids flat out, I was like, if you don't get the trophy and you get that second place medal, throw it away. It's just the first loser. You have to go, and you don't want to get that second place trophy. You want to be number one.
You know, you're not allowed to call it second place anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
I heard that through someone in some sports thing. You're not allowed to call it second place.
Yeah. That's.
Which is
and that's what happens. Is that we train that generation to
Yeah.
think that they can do this and that everything is okay, and then they hit the job market and it's like, wait a minute, this is different than my parents. I mean, the helicopter parents that come in and say, what do you mean my student didn't get or my son or daughter didn't get a great grade? I mean, you hear all of those stories about how hard it is on teachers because of the parents.
Is there an issue with unrealistic expectations? Like, because work is work, you do have to work hard and
Yeah.
you know, and work with other people who have other influences. So it's not like you can go in there and have smoke a cigar and just work for an hour and then you know the other 7 hours you just chill out. You know, so there's kind of like a disconnect, I think, in terms of people's reality of, I think maybe it's an extension of college years. Like some of the private companies that you're mentioning there in terms of the graduate programs, they almost dream it up as if it's like college in a suit. And it's all about networking events, you're drinking every week, you know, during the week at evening times. It's almost like being in college, only you work a bit longer. But then reality hits it like okay, to get beyond being in the middle of 200 students, so to speak, with new grads, you actually have to excel in certain areas and produce some output. So, you know, just making that distinction for people, it's a bit of a, like hitting you with a train if you aren't built into that. So I think there's a little bit of unrealistic expectations out there.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great transition point because as we go into employee experience, I don't want you to think that what I'm talking about is everything has to be about employees and you have to do whatever it takes to make the employee happy. No, the employee has to be accountable for what their key performance indicators are, what their accountabilities are. And if they don't do that and if they aren't fulfilling their role and responsibilities, then you have to move on. You can't just keep somebody because they're an employee and they're on one body and you don't want to go through the interviewing process. One just kind of final point on that before we jump in is the movie Bad Moms. Kind of a pretty funny movie, but that organization, the coffee company that she works for, where she's the only one that actually does any work and the rest of them are just riding around on their skateboards and doing all of this kind of stuff, kind of comes to mind as we're having a little bit of this discussion. But people first, if you do it correctly and create this employee experience, the people are going to be engaged and the people are going to be wanting to do the things that is set forth for them to be successful. And you create the opportunities. It's not just about making sure you keep them happy so they don't leave. If they're that unhappy and they just want everything and they feel very entitled, you want them to leave because that's not the employee you want in the organization. All right, anything else or we'll move on?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
You might be coming to it.
Sure.
What's going through my head as I'm listening to yourself and others is the opportunity for good contracting. In that, you know, the employee experience to me is an environmental factor. Okay, you come to work because this is a really nice place to work. We're doing interesting work. We treat people well. We have respect. Okay. That's kind of like the foundation stones of decent employee experience. But in return, here's the deal, and this is what we expect. And I actually think that's where some of the confusion can happen, if the contracting isn't done up front, and particularly at the recruitment stage. You know, that part of, I suppose, the brief that goes to an agency or whoever's involved in the recruitment, that you know, they sell the sizzle but not the sausage, if you know what I mean. It's kind of like, this is a really exciting place to be, but very little is done around, and this is what's expected of you. And I suppose as the supply-demand situation in terms of how many vacancies are available versus people to fill them, that quite often in recruitment, it's like you'll pick it up when you get in there. But are you going to pick up values and character when you get in there too? You know, that's a conversation I think that was had.
Can you hire that? Can you hire the correct drivers and motivation of the person and the right character of the person when you come in so that you know that they match the job? And then I think the next key to that is, do you have a very clear job description? Do you have real clear key performance indicators or key accountabilities for the position? And does the manager understand the person coming in and what that person is responsible for? Because you can do everything right and have one of those factors out of whack and you're not going to get there.
And also, I'm sure other people will share this, but the timeline in recruitment versus the need for agility. So, you know, I'm recruited into an organization, let's say, for example, and by the time I actually get in there, somebody lifted the goalposts, the job has changed.
Yep.
You know, and being able to be adaptable and agile, is that built into the recruitment process, you know?
Yeah.
So,
And today, more than ever, jobs are changing. One of the quotes that the former owner used to say is that we have customers who demand more from organizations that have less resources to produce it, because we're having to streamline. We went through the 2008 stuff, and now we're into this other era. And in the U.S., it's a very strange era because companies are so busy that they don't have time to do anything. They don't have time to hire correctly. They just need a warm body in this position because they're grounding, trying to deliver their orders and all of those things. So we've gone from people don't have a job and we have to downsize just to not go out of business to now we're so busy that we just need people in place. But when you're bringing in those people just to bring in a warm body, they don't fit the job. And then you're having even more problems because you're having to fix those issues. You're having to replace that person, putting the wrong person on the bus. And then even worse than that, you have that person that maybe could work in the organization, but you put them in the wrong seat. And so how do we go through and understand what each position has, what each position is responsible for, and how do we manage each of those positions? I mean, how many organizations do you think have a good job description for every role?
Has to always change.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they did at one time, and maybe those are from 1997, that they had job descriptions written by an HR person that may or may not have known the job. And I don't mean that as the HR people don't understand the job. It's just you hire a new grad out of college and say, write job descriptions. Well, they might write great job descriptions, but it might not have anything to do with what the company actually is trying to deliver. So there's all of these things that have to come into place. So let's jump into employee experience, and we can have questions along the way, or if there's questions at the end, either way, I'm flexible with that. So what is employee experience? We call it EX. For years, we've focused on customer service, user experience, all of those kinds of things, focused on external. So we wanted to make sure our customers were happy and that our customers had a great experience going through our website or our ordering process or coming into our store and doing the things that they needed to do. So we were focused on the customers. But who are our internal customers? Our internal customers are our employees. And if your internal customers aren't happy, how do you think they treat your external customers? So that's where this employee experience is something that maybe we've been doing it somewhat in the past under a different name. But when you really think about customer service and user experience, just apply it internally to your employees. How do we want to make those employees feel? Because a happy employee working with a customer is going to be smiling, going to be happy, going to be in the mood to try to help them and service them and all those things. So you get the external customer service by default when you have a happy internal person. I think this was another Simon Sinek story of this guy that worked at a coffee shop in Las Vegas in one casino certain days of the week, and then he worked in a different casino on different days of the week. And Simon actually ran into him in both locations. In the first location, he was smiling and happy, and it was awesome. The next location, he was like, here. And in his coffee, took his money, and didn't even say a word to him. And so he's like, stopped and talked to this guy. He's like, why over at Hotel A were you like this, And now today I come in and I see you, and I was excited to see you because we could have a good conversation. You were going to be awesome. And then you're this. He's like, oh, this company just treats us like a transaction. We're just a number to them. They don't care. They don't do anything for us. We're the other company. We have all of these benefits. We have all of these opportunities. The management talks to us. We have these promotional meetings and things on early in the week, and it's just a great place to work. So the same person in two different jobs who's working part-time at both places, and the result of how he's managed shows up in how he works the counter, serving coffee. So it's a thing. It's not just something that we talk about. It really happens. So when we think about, this is the Forbes article that I mentioned. Good thing about this, but you can't actually read the words on this. A set of perceptions that employees have about their experience at work in response to their interaction with the organization. So a set of perceptions that employees have about their experience at work. This is something that Forbes talked about, and that 2018 will be the year of employee experience. I think they're a little ahead. Maybe 2019 will actually be the year that it really starts to kind of take hold. Another one, here's the one, here's a quote that I just mentioned: to produce more with fewer resources and employees for customers who demand more for less. And that applies. He said that probably 20 years ago. And every economy, every stage that we've gone through, it's really made sense. When we are having to lay people off, it made sense. When we're having to try to produce more because we can't hire enough people to do it, it makes sense. You can't do this unless you understand what the job is, and then you understand what employees kind of fit together. So understanding the employees, creating that self-awareness, awareness of others, and awareness of how people fit into an organization. Okay, so customer experience versus employee experience, some of all interactions the user has with a company, some of everything an employee experiences throughout his or her connection to the organization. Everything they experience. It starts from the recruitment process till the exit interview. And we were talking about those 350 resumes that we got for the 2 positions that we have open. You think you have the right people, so let's stop interviewing until we get this figured out because it's taking a lot of time. No, we can't do that. Well, why not? It's taking a lot of time. Because it's creating a poor employee experience if some of those people talk about what it was like to go through the TTI Success Insights interview process. So even though you think you found the people, you have to still go through the rest of them that you haven't got to and say, thank you for the interview and we filled the position, or we would still be interested in you in case something doesn't work out. You just have to kind of keep that process flowing all the way from that first interaction. So who's already on board? Here's something from Richard Branson. There's no magic formula. The key is to treat your staff how you would like to be treated. Think of it as a golden rule, creating exceptional employee experience. That seems simple. How would I want to be treated in an organization? Maybe I treat my employees that way. Maybe you have an interaction level at a leadership level, but you don't interact the same way with employees. Communication. It's a simple thing. It happens in everything we do throughout our day. But sometimes communication can be the hardest piece. And if we don't understand who we're communicating to, and we're talking the way we like to talk versus they like to listen, it doesn't actually get in their ear. It just bounces off. How many of you have ever met a salesperson that you just couldn't wait to buy something from that person? And then there's another person you walk into, and just the first few things that person said to you is like, ooh, I'm not going to buy from that person. Is there anybody else in the store? It's communication style. Understanding kind of who you're dealing with. And this all comes from one of our assessments, which is DISC. And it's just even understanding how a person walks, how they talk. Are they walking in aggressively? Are they very cautious? Are they standing close to you or standing far away? Gives you clues on how you should communicate to a person. Just understanding, reading the body language, you can get these kinds of things. Another one, Mark Levy. Anything that sets employee up for success and improves our culture should be part of the X. So now the culture's starting to come into it as well. Employee experience and culture. How are they affecting each other? You think you can have a great culture if you don't have good employee experience? They're connected. And the culture's a hot topic. I mean, people want great cultures in their organizations. So they know what they want, they're not sure how to get there. And do you have the right people on your team to create the culture that you want? The culture starts with leadership. Does the leadership have a purpose? Are they creating opportunities? Is there a good environment so that this culture can live? Or is it a negative environment? Is it like what someone said about the recruitment process is awesome, you get into the organization and it doesn't match what you thought you were getting yourself into? Let's talk about some of the things employee experience is not. It's not just improving your HR process. It's not the Massage Mondays. Employer branding initiatives. It's not that by itself, but that's a piece that kind of fits into the overall process. The same as customer experience. We talked about that. Yes, you have to do some of the stuff on the outside, but it's not the same with the internal people. And it's not employee engagement. That was a question earlier too. Employee engagement comes from a great customer experience. Employee engagement is an end goal. Focusing on engagement is not necessarily working for a lot of companies because they want employee engagement, but they're not sure how to get it. So just saying we need more engagement and the managers go out and get your employees engaged doesn't necessarily work. It represents a commitment to the company and or job performance, not to the people. Because we need more engagement because we need this job to perform better. So engagement really ties to performance. Like I said, it's a result as opposed to a process. So I'm not sure how the unemployment rates and those kinds of things in Ireland are right now compared to the U.S., but in the U.S. we're at record lows. Same here, record lows. And so it's tough to find people. And those people that you're finding are, like I said, in our market, 85% of them are in their current job. And there's something called ghosting that has become a term in the U.S. where employees are just using these interview processes to get a raise with their current company. Or they'll come in and they'll go through the process just so they can go back to their employer and say, I have this offer. And then you never hear from them again because they got a raise at their own place. So that's a phenomenon that's going on with this as well. Competition for the best employees. Employees are becoming smarter. What are the people in the recruiting process? They know what they want. They know what they're looking for. They do research on the different companies. If they haven't done research on your company, do you want them as an employee? When you come in and they go through the interview process and they know more about you than you know about them because they've done their research on your websites. That's happening more and more today than it has in the past. So employee rewards. This is something I think Corey, you mentioned in the beginning about how employees are rewarded. Not everybody wants just a big raise. They don't turn them down, but that's not necessarily what motivates everybody. We need to make the rewards personal. What's driving each individual? What are the things that make each of you tick? Do you get excited for continuing education? Do you have more motivation if you're in a great office with a nice view as opposed to a cubicle in the middle of a building? Do you feel like if you're in a position where you can help people, is something that would be motivational? Do you feel like you need somewhere where you always have opportunities to do things? Or do you like the structured kind of way of doing things? So all of those are different driving forces that people have. And the one-size-fits-all motivational speech doesn't necessarily work for employees. Same with employee development. It's personalized. Each person develops at a different rate. What are they developing to? Do you understand their behavioral style so that you can kind of say, this person really is somebody that doesn't like a lot of people interaction, likes to be more detail oriented and focus on those kinds of things, versus this person really likes a lot of people attention and interacts with people well and is very people oriented. So they would go in two different development paths if you didn't hire them into the right places to begin with. So job career focused, mixed with personal development. Immediate and ongoing. This is something that you can't wait. You can't hire somebody in and then wait 6-9 months and then get to their development path. So there are new opportunities and there are ways that they can grow within the organization. This is something that has to happen almost from day one. And you have those first few weeks where you're kind of getting them on board and going through the onboarding process. But that onboarding process can't really stop. You have to have something in place to where you're really always having that interaction with employees. And as I'm going through this, and as I said before we started this section, I don't want you to think that I'm just standing up here preaching that the employees are everything in an organization. They still have to be accomplishing their key accountabilities and doing the things that they need to do. But the employee experience is what's going to be energizing them and driving them and making them love what they do, so that they come in and they just get started and not at the water cooler saying, ain't it awful? So job-related development. One of the things that's huge with employees is just to have a very good understanding of what they're accountable for. What is their role all about? Role clarity. Role clarity is something that is critical. Once you start to lose a little of that role clarity, is it harder to get up and go to work today? Because I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not sure what my performance review is coming up April 7th. And I'm not sure if I'm doing the things that they want me to do or not, because nobody's ever really said much to me over the last 6 months. So I'm not sure if I'm going to get a good mark or a bad mark or a raise or no raise. That's questions in their head, and that's not role clarity, and so they're really struggling thinking about things they shouldn't be thinking about on a daily basis. We talked a lot about behavioral traits and motivating factors, kind of what's driving them, how do they like to do what they do, but what personal skills do they have? We talked about people skills and personal skills in the beginning. Do their skills match the job? And we talk about different kinds of conflicts, where there's a me-you conflict. There's sometimes me-me conflicts, where I have internal conflicts with myself. But there's something called a me-job conflict, too, that is more common than we think. And sometimes it has to do with the personal skills. If the job is requiring more skills than the person has, the job has a problem with the person. But if the person has more skills than the job requires, the person has a problem with the job. And so it can go both ways. Do you have an overskilled person in a position, or do you have an underskilled person in a position that's really having to struggle every day just to get their job done? And so when we look at this and understand what skills the job requires, what skills does a person bring to the office every day, it's something that is important to understand about the job as well as about the people that you have. So employee wellness. We've talked about work-life balance for a long time. And I don't think work-life balance really exists anymore. I think it becomes more of a blur, and it's because of these things. Our master distributor from the UK was here with us yesterday for yesterday's session, and last night we went over to the pub for a beer afterwards, and I think 2 or 3 times while we were sitting there, I saw her click on her email. I said, "You're just as bad as my wife. You can't leave that phone alone, can you? You're always checking to see if there's something on my email." Corey's shaking his head. You probably do the same. I focus on it. I try not to check my email on my phone, maybe a couple times on the weekend. But once I'm at home at night, I try to focus on other things that not blur those lines of work-life work. But if we're excited about what we're doing every day, it's harder to understand where those lines really end and personal starts and job stops. And that's that physical, mental, and financial wellness. There's something to be said about during your break time, going out for a walk, getting into the sunshine. It used to be where a lot of people had their breaks and they would go out and smoke. You don't see that near as much anymore, but my office is on the end of our building and it faces the street, and all day long I see employees with their employee badges on and things walking by my office because there are companies that are around us, like Fender Guitars is behind us, Tasers across the street. And those employees are forced to go out and get out into the sunshine during the day. Even in Arizona where it's 110 degrees, you'll see people walking on the sidewalk on their afternoon walk or their morning walk. More in the mornings that time of year than the afternoons. But it's something that's really important is keep that physical, and it even helps with the mental, just getting out of the office for 15 minutes in the afternoon or the morning. Employee wellness drives employee production and experience and creates engagement. All of these things are something to think about within an organization. So this is just the beginning. We talked about internal surveys. I talked about ENPS a little bit in our transition. That information is huge for organizations to truly understand what's going on with employees. And when we do our annual strategy, we just finished it because our strategic year starts April 1st. We send out employee surveys. And we have, like I said, we have about 57 employees right now. I think we got about 45 of them to respond. We had over 87 pages of data from our surveys that we read as a leadership team in the organization, line by line, from every single employee. It's all anonymous, so we don't, each question, and then you have the list of people that responded to the question and their responses. As a leadership team for our strategic planning for the year, we read every single statement so that we understand exactly how employees feel. And the ENPS is part of that. But it gives us the feeling from the kind of bottom-up organization of what's going on in the company and what are the things that we need to address. HR was one of them that came out very clear in the organization. We really need a dedicated HR person. There was a few other things that came out, but there's several initiatives that we're putting into our strategic year based on what our employee feedback is. So utilize those surveys. Google Forms and those things are free. Build a survey, send it out. It's simple. So we talked a lot about this too. Total employee experience is the recruitment to alumni. Other aspects, how are their commutes? When we hire people, Dave and I are usually the last two to interview, and Dave's favorite question is, how far do you live from the office and how is your drive in? Phoenix isn't terrible traffic, but it's very spread out. From one corner to the city to the other city can take over 2.5 hours to drive. It's big. And so where do you live? What's your commute going to be like? Are you going to be where you're in your car for an hour every morning before you get to the office? It makes a difference. What are the equipment that people are going to be using? What type of desks do they have? What types of chairs do they have? Are they comfortable? Are they good for your back? Those kinds of things. Are you going to be comfortable with what you do? Do you want a desk that raises up or lowers down? That's something that's becoming more and more popular. So here's a couple fun statistics. So 87% of workers want their future companies to be transparent. 80% are interested in learning more about their organization's decision-making process. 55% of business owners describe their organizations as very transparent, but only 18% of their employees would agree. Only 18% of the 87 who want it would agree that their companies are transparent. So kind of your homework from this process is, can you articulate why an individual would want to work at your organization? Can you articulate it? Can you say 2 or 3 sentences about your company or why someone would want to work there? And then the kicker there is, would your current employees agree with what you just said? And are there 3 things that you can do next week after this holiday weekend that you can do next week that would impact your employee experience? Just 3 things. And then and see what happens within the organization. So I'll kind of leave you with a couple things. People first is our movement. TTI Success Insights is really a foundation behind this. We have assessments to help people understand who they are and how they fit in. And we really want people to be able to reveal, realize, and release human potential and organizational potential. And then I see in the workbook as well, there's a Zig Ziglar quote. It says, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. So just a few words to think about over the weekend, and then take back to your organizations next week. And so hopefully this was enjoyable for you. And any questions or comments or feedback from me at this point? Or?
Yeah, thanks, Rich. That was really interesting. I wanted to make a point. I asked yesterday at the workshop here with our conference and with our distributors, and I asked the question: which would you rather, an A strategy and a B team, or an A team and a B strategy? That's an interesting question, because I'm an MBA, and I lived my whole life in strategy, and it took me literally a lifetime to realise that in fact it's really about the people. And that's not some of these waffly statements. Let me tell you exactly what I mean by that. When we think about a business or an organisation, we tend to think about the organisation and the plans and whatever. But if you think about it in terms of the people, and you ask them the question, what does a successful person look like in the organisation? Well, a successful person in an organisation looks like a person who is matched to their role. That we know clearly what the role requires. We've defined it, and we found a person who naturally performs that role. By definition, they will be happy. By definition, they will have good experience. By definition, they will be engaged. And imagine in your company, imagine the companies you work with, or the organizations you work with. Try and put to front of mind that person who is very successful in their role, who's really well matched, who's doing a really good job. We all know them. There aren't loads of them, but there are a few of them. Now imagine if everybody in the company was like that. If everybody knew what the deliverables were for the role and had the competencies, the behaviours, the motivators to actually be successful at that role, they were well matched to that role. What impact would that have? And what would that group of people look like as a culture? And how would that group of people come together and craft a plan to take the company forward? And how would they implement that plan and execute and engage in that planning process? So when we talk about that, what I've learned in my lifetime, that really is about the people. I don't just mean a waffle like, oh, it's all about the people type of stuff. I mean, no, in a really hard way. In a really, really hard-edged way. It really is all about the people. The right people, the right seats, then doing the right things, and then doing them right. So people, strategy, and execution in that order. And I believe this to my toenails, that's why I'm in this business. You know, but it's a hard thing, it's not a soft thing. As Rick said earlier, employee experience is about Massage Monday. Employee experience about the person feeling, I'm actually doing something useful, I'm doing something worthwhile, I'm doing something I'm good at, I'm doing something that is recognised as valued. That's what employee experience, and I'm working with people who are just like me, who do the same kind of thing, and we're building something great together. That's what employee experience is about. And that's really, so it is a hard thing, and it starts with hard things. The slide we've got there is about the key accountability. It starts with understanding the roles. It's then matching the people to the roles, then building around that. That's where it actually starts. So for me, I just want to make the point, if you think about which would you rather, strategy or people, think about it this way. I'd rather people, give me a great group of people any day of the week, and we'll make it up as we go along. We'll find a way forward. And great group of people means people fitted to the right roles, match the roles where they naturally perform, and then you can train, develop, and so on from there.
Any other questions, comments? Yep.
Just one point. Thank you, Rick. I've more than 3 points to take away from today, so that's been worthwhile. Just an observation, really, anecdotally, your comment about people who are obsessed with their email phone, which resonated. And our small company was acquired by a larger company, and one of the reasons that acquisition went ahead is the cultural fit. We've been working with these people for about 6 years, and we know we're of like mind. And they're very strong in culture, but one of the things they do within the organisation in relation to the phone specifically is meetings start and end on time. And that's just a little foundation piece. And there are specific things they do to ensure that meetings start and end on time. It's about respect and productivity. Part of that is, once you establish that, people turn up for meetings a little ahead of time because you need to be ready.
Yep.
You need to be there for it to start on time. What they then say is mobile phones are not allowed in the meeting room. Not that they're on silent, not that they're face down. They are not allowed in the room, including at any time. Right? So this changes the dynamic. So now people turn up a couple of minutes early, because you do, and instead of 6 or 8 people sitting around a table silently, heads down, everybody getting a little dopamine hit. You're in control of where they get the dopamine hit, that psychology. You have the opportunity to change where they get the hit. Because you know what's happening. So what happens when you absent the phones? They actually have a box. You check in your phone outside the door. You leave it there and you come in. People now have to come in and stand around looking at one another. And they don't have the distraction of the phone. And after, it doesn't take very long. They can't not talk to one another. And what they talk about inevitably is not work. Right? It's how are the kids? How's that thing you worked out on last night? How did that work out? What about that football? What about the tennis? Whatever it is. Instead of a room of silent people ignoring one another, now when you walk into the room a few minutes in advance, it's a buzz. There's an energy. And then when the meeting kicks off, that carries on. So these are really small adjustments. A lot of this stuff is not difficult. You just have to do it. And very small changes. It's like changing, adjusting the tiller on a ship. Very small changes make a big difference to where you actually end up.
Yeah, there's a video with Simon Sinek that talks about that same principle of if you don't have phones in the meeting, you actually have to talk to the people you work with. One of the things that we haven't got that implemented in our organization yet, I would like to see that. But one of the things that we have done, I think we started it back in October, is we only allow meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, you actually get to work. Because it just got to the point where you're going from meeting to meeting to meeting. And it really works. I mean, people have to be very thoughtful about what type of meeting they're going to schedule and those kinds of things. We do allow 2 to 3 people to work together on a project, but it can't be just a meeting to have discussions. Those only can be on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And it's made a huge difference in terms of productivity for us. But I do like the concept of no phones in there. With everybody's attached to them, so we have to see if we can get that in.
Anything else? Concept though, I suppose. You don't feel like putting more rules into the workplace as well, somewhat archaic, you can't do X, so you're taking away a little bit of personality and creativity and how someone, I suppose, manages themselves. And it depends on the person and then how I suppose they fit into that organisation. Like I suppose real concept great. If someone told me to X outside, okay, I'd do it, but I'd just tell you not to use it, and I won't, leave it. So I think it's a little bit, I suppose, of the type of person and how they would fit, which I suppose comes into culture, etc. But it wouldn't work for everyone. It's not a case of everyone will just align to the rules.
It's that one size doesn't fit all.
I'm thinking about that too.
And I'm kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, because it seems like it works, but at the same time, you.
Yeah, and you've got to respect people first and foremost, and that you can and you can't would break most people. But if we go back to that initial contracting, it's a little bit like, I don't know if you've ever visited somebody's house where you take your shoes off at the door, okay? It's your house. Okay, and that's just their rule. It's how they want to be in their own home, and that's how they'd like anybody visiting to kind of come into their home. And that's okay. That's okay. I think if we know it from the outset, rather than and here's another set of rules, and here's another set of rules. I love the idea of just like coaches will do. Ask, don't tell.
I think it's more about
that's
rather than
kind of a
rule. Bring us on the journey to why it's going to make a change, maybe.
But the clarity piece is so important because, let's say you might take the information and go, okay, you don't want me to use my phone. Of course I won't use my phone because you have this respect. But someone else will go, sure, look what I've done. Okay, my phone is here. Okay, the beeps, I might just flip it over. That kind of thing. So you have to be clear. So no phone, but it's kind of really at that contracting stage, as opposed to new rules coming in every week or every month or whatever it may be.
But I don't think, sorry, I think the bit that it might have to start as a rule, right, just let's try it, but what you're maybe not factoring in is the benefit. So I think it would be self-reinforcing if the meetings are more energetic, more focused.
Yeah.
People might be quicker to wrap up because they're worried to get back to their phone. So I think it's putting down ground rule, getting people involved and up for it, and then if it's working, it will continue naturally, and you forget it was a rule in the first place. It's a suggestion, and it's a way of working, and you give it a go. If it works, sometimes you stick with it. If it doesn't, you move on to try something else.
Yeah, I met someone during the week who were telling me a story about somebody they used to work with. They said they just got a phone call one day. Their CEO was at a meeting. They were like, "Get rid of all the printers. We're going paperless." Literally, get rid of all the printers. We're going paperless. And I was like, "But was it really that issue?" And they were like, "No, that was it. It was a phone call and an email. Get rid of them all. I'll be back in the office tomorrow. No printers to be there." And they were like, "There was no change. It was like, just get rid of them." But then people were like, "How do you work?" So I suppose that's what I mean about the delivery piece and why you're doing something.
Sure.
That's a little extreme. But true.
I just throw something in there. I think this is excellent, actually, really well delivered, very insightful. I was caught by the Forbes headline there, a set of perceptions that employees have about their experiences at work and response to interaction with the organisation. And then about the results, 55% of businesses feel that their organisation is very transparent, but only 18% of the employees agree with that. And I think oftentimes these things can fall down to a conflict of perception. Yeah. So as more senior managers in the organisation, we're perceiving the experience that our employees are feeling, and they might be perceiving the same experience. And sometimes if we can't change our perception, it can, whilst it's wonderful, we need to take that journey a little bit. And there's often that conflict in organizations. We're doing everything right. Our employee experience is brilliant. We do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for employees. Yeah, but how are they experiencing it? Yeah, and it's that breakdown can cause a lot.
We do the internal surveys once a year. We also have monthly one-on-ones with our direct reports, and I try to do quarterly skip levels to drop down a level just to have those conversations and things too. And it's the more communication you have within the organization, the more you truly understand what's going on. Versus the perception, and perceptions are very misleading, and especially in email communication, because people put tone towards an email. There's not tone in an email. You have to read the words and take the words for granted. You can't say, well, they meant it this way. How do you know that? And so we have one of our rules of engagement is no coaching through email. So if you have something you want to talk to somebody about, go to them and talk to them face to face. And so there's just those kinds of things as well. And perception, like you said, is a very big thing. Anything else? Thank you. This was an awesome group. You guys were very, very interactive compared to yesterday, so it made a lot of fun. So do you have anything to kind
No,
of
I just want to thank everybody for coming. And I was quite nervous, and I don't do a lot of these. And Rick was in town for the conference. He said we'd do an executive briefing. And of course, you always say, wonder will anybody show up? So I want to say thank you very much to all of you for showing up. I hope there's something of value out of it. We, as you see, believe passionately in what we're doing. And we really think, again, to make the point here, this is a hard-edged thing. This is not a flaky conversation. It's a hard-edged conversation. If you want to build a company, if you want to really do it right, this is the way. In the new world we live in, this is the way. It's people first, with this hard edge I keep talking about. So thanks a lot for coming. I look forward to talking to you all in the fullness of time. We've recorded this. We will send out a link to you on this recording, so if you want to share it with people in your organisation, please feel free to do so. So thank you very much. And thanks a lot to Rick.
When you to the venue and breakfast, it's a kind of experience.